Okay, I am actually not going to use the colors. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to identify A, B, and C. So if you remember, this is what standard form looks like, and this is our given equation. So we're going to identify A, B, and C. So they're just the numbers that are in front of the variables.
What colors do you need?
You don't need any colors.
Oh, that's kind of depressing.
I know. So the first variable we're going to identify is A. So if we look at its location, there's no number in front of the variable. So that means that A is 1. It's not 0. It would be 0 if there was nothing there. But there's something there, so it's 1. And then our B value is going to be 2. What? And our C value is -3. The most important thing is that if there isn't a number, it's 1, and then just to take the signs with you so that you don't get confused later on. But all of you are pretty good at doing that. So does everyone see where I got A, B, and C from?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is find the vertex. So if you remember when we were graphing in vertex form, we found the vertex was like the bottom or the top of the parabola. So it's the first thing we're going to find. So we're going to use this equation, which is x equals negative b over 2a. So that equation is like one of those equations that would always be provided to you, so you don't have to remember it, but you have to know how to use it. So like if you were taking like the SATs or the MCAS, like they would probably, this would be on the reference sheet, but you would have to know how to apply it, if that makes sense. Just FYI. So we are going to take this equation, we're going to rewrite it, and we're going to plug in what we know. So our B value is 2, and then our A value is 1. And then from there, you're just going to simplify. Sorry, give me a second to write that down. So if we were to simplify this, we have 2 times 1, which would just be 2. And then 2 divided by 2 is 1. So our answer would be -1. So that is our x value at our vertex. So then to find our y value, we're going to plug in the x value to the equation, kind of like we did in vertex form. So I'm going to rewrite my equation.
Wait, why is that 2 a negative 2?
Because it's in the formula. It's always just negative.
Oh.
I'm going to rewrite the equation. And then I'm going to replace my x with -1. So we're trying to find the y value when x is -1. So you could directly plug this into your calculator and it should give you the right answer because calculators know order of operations. But I'm just going to solve it in my head. But if you want to do it on your calculator in the future, you can. So -1 squared or -1 times -1 would give us 1. And 2 times -1 would give us -2. And then we'll bring down our -3. We're just going to put that all together.
Oh my god, it's 1, 2, 3.
1 minus 2 is -1. And -1 minus 3 is -4. So our vertex is -1, -4. And we now have our first point on our parabola. So you use the formula, and then you plug in for x. Any questions on that step? This is probably the worst step.
Yeah, I don't understand anything. But it's fine.
So all we did now was plug into the equation, and then get the value, and then solve for y. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is find the y-intercept. So we find the y-intercept by setting the x equal to 0. While you might think this is a really annoying step, I'm going to show you why it's not that annoying. So we are going to rewrite the equation yet again. And then I'm going to replace my x values with 0. So the good thing about this step is that this 0 times 0 is just going to be 0. And then the second number is multiplied by 0, so it's also going to be 0. So it's usually just the back half of the equation is your answer, if that makes sense. So since this will be eliminated and this will be eliminated, we're just left with -3. So that's kind of like a pattern that you'll see as we keep going. So this makes this step kind of easy because those two values are always eliminated. So it's always just like the C value usually, in most situations. So then we just make our point. So when x is 0, y is -3. I think that's the easiest step. Everyone still with me? Any questions? Okay. The next step is we are going to find the roots. So this is where the factoring comes into play. So I'm going to rewrite my equation again. And we need to factor the equation. So yesterday we talked about factoring by decomposition. The only time we need a factor by decomposition is if there's a value in front of this x squared. If there's not, then we can just do regular factoring, which, if you remember, is a lot easier. So in this case, we're just doing regular factoring. And for most of the ones we're doing today, to make it a little easier. So we need to find what multiplies to -3 and what adds to 2. So I'll give you a second to think about that. The two values that multiply to -3 and add to 2. Anyone knows them, you can shout them out.
3 and -1.
3 and -1, because -3 times 3 times -1 would be -3, and 3 plus -1 would be 2. So all we do is pull out our variable and add in those points we just talked about. After doing factoring by decomposition, this seems like so much easier. So much less work. Everyone with me so far? So these factored values are going to become our x-intercepts. So what we want to know is if we set them equal to 0, what is the value of x? So we're going to set both of these equal to 0 and solve for x. So we're going to do +1. So x equals 1 minus 3. So x equals -3. So if you don't want to do this little extra step of solving, it's always just going to be the opposite of what's in the parentheses. So since it's +3, the x value is -3. Since it's -1, the x value is +1. So this is kind of extra step. So these points end up looking like this. The x value is 1 when y is 0. X value is -3 when y is 0. So that is the reason why we factor, is to find the x-intercepts, or some people call them the roots. So now I'm going to go back and I'm just going to circle my points so they look a little bit more prominent on the page. So we have our vertex, our y-intercept, and our x-intercepts. And I'm just going to go ahead and graph those. So we have -1, -4, 0, -3. 1, 0, and 0, -3, 0. So as you might notice, we don't have all the points, but that's okay because we have enough to draw in our parabola. And that is the end.